Okay, so in this example, I wanted to show you a little bit of what I added to the settings window. As you guys know, the modules always kind of had power to create custom settings that were radio button, Boolean true or false, custom help, lock in the group. Again, if it was added by a module, then you normally would want this module or the group to be locked in. You wouldn't want people to, of course, be able to change that. Again, here's one with multiple settings. Again, custom help. So this was something that modules could do, all along. It's just not something that a user could do if they added a setting. In this case, this one's unmanaged, so you can see managed ones again kind of lock in that group, and unmanaged ones, of course, allow you to change that, or of course, add a new one if whatever you want it to be, or pick one that's already in there. So what I did is, again, as a role, if you have this role, you'll be able to actually go in and change some of those settings, or if you add a new field, be able to add some of those additional things. Because by default, as you know, your settings is just a giant text area, so it's not very helpful. So how can we go in and make these things, say, a Boolean or something like that? Well, I made it so if you hold down the Shift key, hit Add Setting, right away you can see you get all of those other kind of module hidden settings. Again, modules always had access to those to add these in there, but now we're actually letting the user, if they want to add custom settings, to go in and actually set those up as well. Again, most of your settings are going to come in from modules, from the config files and things like that. But again, I just wanted to make sure that if a user wanted to add a custom config, they could do that. So we're actually going to just take a look real quick at some of the ones I did set up. So by default, you can see that this one, example one, is a Boolean. So what exactly does that look like in the back end? Again, hold down Shift and we get the really advanced editor here. This is what it actually is currently, true, false. Of course, it's a Boolean with custom help. We, of course, can change the setting, whether it's locked or not, with this advanced editor. By default, all settings are turned on, and this actually allows you to turn those off if you want to debug. Normally, you wouldn't turn those off, but again, if you're messing around or you're just debugging, you can do that. And of course, the internal system does actually recognize that, even though we don't normally show that again to the end user. Here is that custom help that you see show up, actually just like this custom help. This is actually the internal way to track the settings. So if a module inserts those, the internal uh, value here is actually set to what the module is. That way, if you delete the module, of course, it can go back and remove those settings. Finally, here's that managed, so it can actually lock in that group. Again, if it's a setting that a module put in there, normally that's going to be managed. You don't want people changing the group around. So it's going to be managed and it's going to lock that in. And then here's where we get fancy. So again, that one was a true false, and here's where we can say it's a Boolean or a text area, radio, or input. In this case, it's a Boolean, and if you read this little description down here, there are no other options available. So that'll give us a Boolean. This guy here, oops, hold on the Shift. This guy here is a multiple radio buttons here. So how do we edit that? We say it's radio buttons, and we actually use, just like you said down here in the description, we actually use some real simple JSON for the name value pair, and that's actually what it will set in the database depending on what's in the key. And then this is, of course, what it shows the end user. So in this case, we're just putting the text straight in. So if you click orange, of course, in the database, it's going to store the word orange. So that's kind of how a radio button works. Again, here's just a regular text input. So here we're going to say it's an input. And if you do choose a text input optionally, you can add a size. So actually, if we take this out and we go into here, you'll notice that by default it is going to be 100% there, or the full width. So then what we can do is go in and shorten that up. So for some reason we know that it's just going to be, an age or something really short, we can do that and make that option real small as well. And of course an input. And then finally, here is our standard text area. How can we customize that? Well, let's lock it down so that they can't change the group. And now a user without these permissions comes in and they're again locked down, so they can't change the group. They can only change the setting itself. So again, modules always had this power, but this gives the power then to the end user as well if they're going to actually go in and put additional settings in here that maybe a module or something isn't going to manage.